Thank you for joining me today, Miss Hodan. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
We had a conversation the other day, and you said you went into the grade 2s to talk about water.
Yes.
So can you give us an idea of what you got to talk about?
I got to talk about how drought has affected Somalia. I was born in Somalia. Somali people are known to be nomadic people.
Okay.
So what they usually do is the nomads move from one area to another area for their livestock in search of grass, and so the animals can graze. And so it's kind of like searching for water. So they pack everything and move along with the whole livestock. So with recent years, there's been severe droughts, especially in East Africa.
Yeah.
And especially where I'm from, Somaliland. So that has caused, major problems. The nomadic people, they have an advantage to the farmers because they generally move around anyway.
Right.
So they're used to that. They can just move. Once it's not like they lose their crops and that's it. But even for them, with that advantage, things became even more difficult.
With the drought. So what made the grade 2s invite you in? What's their unit of study, and how did this relate to what they're working on?
Right now, they're working and learning about natural forces. So Miss Natasha had this great idea where they can make connections with the teachers that work here.
I love it.
Yeah. So
I love it. As you're speaking, I'm recalling the grade 5s were doing migration.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about how to bring migrating for climate reasons.
Yes.
And the students hit a very basic level of understanding that.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering next year when they do that unit, it would be fabulous to have you come in and say, no, climate does impact the reason for people needing to move.
Yes,
Definitely.
Yeah. And, with recent years, some of the effects of the drought, some of it is natural, and obviously some of it is, man-made or human-caused.
Can you speak a little bit about the human-caused water scarcity? Do you know?
For example, with the large consumption of fertilizers, with the drinking water in the world being just 1%.
Yeah.
And then you have the so-called drinking water in terms of places like in Somaliland, where farmers are tending to use more chemicals, just to save their crop, basically. They're not trying to do it to harm anyone, actually quite the opposite. They're trying to save their families and, save their crop.
Amazing what people do when they have to feed their families, right?
But then it's causing them more harm.
Yes.
Because the little drinking water they had would get affected by certain chemicals and so forth. So I'm not an expert in that field, but I think that's one of the human causes. Yeah. The other human causes is, the way we've been treating our planet and how it's affected how it's affected the natural weather, and Somaliland hasn't been getting as much rain as it should be, and there's been huge changes in the world in terms of weather, and places like that get affected more.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this issue from a glocalized lens here in Qatar, they have a huge water scarcity issue here in Qatar.
Definitely.
And listening to the water scarcity issues in Africa and hearing about all of this, I wonder if as we try to build a culture of sustainability here, we want your experience and your background to shed some light on what is happening in other parts of the world and how are we impacted by that locally.
Yeah,
definitely. This is another connection I'm just making as we're speaking.
Yeah.
The garden towers that we have in primary and secondary, one of the topics of conversation around those towers is it solves a water scarcity issue as well.
Yeah.
Because that water is being pumped right through.
Yeah.
So I wonder, do you see any scope for design and innovation in terms of agriculture. You talked about the use of water in the agriculture needs of Africa and Somalia. Do you see design and innovation in terms of these garden towers maybe playing out in that part of the world as well?
I do. I know I'm not an expert in this, but I know there are different organizations and, different UN organizations who are working with the farmers and trying to work with people to kind of educate them. But it all comes, there's a safety aspect of how do you get, first of all, there's the cost.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get the resources?
Yes.
And especially when you have such poor countries. And then how do you get that out there in terms of safety?
Yes.
The country has to be, 100% safe.
You can't have one person have this great aeroponic garden and all these resources. Like they're not going to be safe from their neighbors anymore because their neighbors are going to be like, hey, how'd you get this?
Yeah. And water problems or lack of water has caused, conflicts. And I feel like if our students here would know about such things, they would treat the water we have as something important.
Yeah.
And even in Qatar, I know Qatar, mashallah, is very blessed. But, every year we pray for the water.
Yes.
I know in Islam, water is important. Giving a glass of water to someone is seen as charity, one of the best charities.
Wow, I didn't know that. You taught me something new today. I'll start offering water to everybody. I was actually dreaming up a way. I'm like, how do I celebrate my green warriors or my systems thinking warriors in this school? And I was like, well, I don't want to give them a certificate because that's wasting paper, and I don't want to go around with treats or something and chocolate bars just because that's not really good for well-being. And now you just taught me I can go around giving, pouring a glass of water and saying thank you for being a green warrior in our school.
And there's even another saying of the Prophet when he said, do not waste water even if you are at a running stream. So,
Beautiful.
Use the minimum. Just because you have a whole running stream next to you
doesn't mean
you waste it. So water is something important. I know from the culture and the religious background in Islam, and I know a lot of I think some of our students might not be even aware.
I'm not. You're teaching me right now. So,
Yeah, and I know Qatar takes, the water issue very seriously. I know I've read somewhere it was the Qatar National Vision for, 2030. Conserve water and energy in Qatar. And I know Qatar and Qatar Foundation are trying to do their best to lessen the use or wastage of water. I know in our, QF compound, they've recently fitted faucet aerators to reduce the amount of water.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I know we've had Dr. Sami from HBKU come in and talk to students about desalination plants here, and the cost of desalinizing the water is crazy. It is ridiculous. And so even the water that's going to the seasonal flowers that we planted outside, that's expensive water that's going there. And so there is a lot of movement here to educate their people on the value of every drop of water.
I know they have a Kahrama Water Awareness Museum Pack.
Yes.
So I know it's Qatar is really trying to push and educate all of us,
young
they are, and old,
about
the importance of water, the water usage, how, where does our drinking water come from? And it's something I'm aware of a little bit, but I myself would want to learn more.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I know Qatar are trying to, they do recycle water. And I think in the Gulf countries, they're one of the countries who recycle the most water.
Yes.
In our region.
They have a very high need as well.
Yes.
They also, I've heard a stat, and I have to look it up, the water consumption is very high here as well.
Very high. I think it's one of the world's highest.
I saw that, but I wasn't sure. So I was like, we probably need to look up that fact. But yes.
Yeah.
I had some students from Young Innovators Award, and they were looking up facts, and they were just wide-eyed to see that Qatar does have a very high water consumption. And when we pair that with their water scarcity issues and the cost to desalinize water, it's time to educate. And it's time to educate.
Change. And I think, like at home with my own kids, we've talked about this, and sometimes they come home with the water bottles, and it's like half or just a quarter, and then it's old water from yesterday. They don't want to drink it, so they either directly use it to water the plants, because we have quite a few plants, or we collect it and then still use it to water our plants. And I'm sure we can do something like that here. Maybe use like a big container or something where everyone put it by the gate, everyone pours in.
Might have to wait for after COVID before we start sharing water. Limitations and hurdles, but I love the idea.
Especially it's now we're encouraging the wash of hands, because usually, you would always encourage the wash of hands, but you wouldn't encourage the enormous use of water.
Wash for 5 minutes, wash for 2 minutes. Yes.
And now we're emphasizing use water.
COVID definitely has had an impact on society.
But I think even with COVID, I'm sure with education, even our youngest from early years can feel empowered, especially when they realize the small changes they can do. Yeah. That can help.
Love it.
Because I was reading something, and I think it said from 2050 or something, and it was quite grim. It was quite not something that you want to think about, but it's reality. Yeah. Like water scarcity would probably cause a lot more conflicts, and a lot more people who you wouldn't really think of being hard hit will be hard hit. Yeah. So, we have to do what we have to do.
We're going to start talking currency when it comes to water now. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Water-rich places versus water-poor places.
Exactly.
I wanted to thank you today. What a beautiful information you're able to share. And I love how you're able to connect, where you were born and raised, and the issues in Somalia, and connecting them to Qatar and the issues in Qatar, and what we're trying to get students and staff and community and everyone in the world to see is that there's a lot of global issues that need to connect us in their solutions instead of divide us in as we move forward.
Yeah.
So
we are one. We're one community. We're one humanity, and our actions do impact, positively. Yeah. There's positive consequences and negative consequences to every action that we take, everything we do, and it impacts us worldwide. Yeah. So I think that's the thing we have to focus on. Like the little things we're doing here does affect things that are happening across the world.
Yeah. And it's also behavior change.
Yes.
So COVID has caused behavior change that we talked about in terms of how long we wash our hands. But, behavior change, if we can get the kids really young, we will see them saving water in their water bottles or taking shorter showers. And so over time, when they're adults, they will impact. So we need to start focusing on the behavior change over time.
Yes, because that's how you build culture. Yes. Yeah. And we can start with our school culture.
Hodan, thank you for today. It's been lovely chatting with you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.